Hey everybody, it's Party Elite with a beginner's guide to Total War Warhammer. Attacking is another topic that might sound pretty simple, but there are a lot of options that often go unused or unnoticed, and some mechanics that might even seem counterintuitive. Now, attacking enemy units is as simple as selecting the unit you want to use and right-clicking on the targeted enemy unit. This will have yours march over slowly, and as they get close to the enemy unit, they'll engage in combat. This is great for covering long distances with a target in mind, as no energy is wasted and they slowly march over. However, as you get closer, what you'll want to do is you'll want to select your unit and double right-click on the target to have them start to run over and ultimately result in a charge. So you'll see when they close the gap a little bit, they'll get to a point which is sort of the minimum distance you need to be for a charge, and then they'll speed up and clash into each other. Now, being in a charge gives your attacking units a bonus. This charge bonus only lasts for a little while, but it can make the difference between winning and losing an engagement. So I've got these troops engaged here. Let's get some ranged infantry involved as well. Now, you'll never typically want to fire into your own engagement because you can kill your own troops as well, but for the purpose of this example, let's go ahead and do this. Now, I've got my ranged units selected here, but they're not close enough to open fire at the enemy. So if I single right-click on the enemy target, they'll march until they get within range, which you can see with the cone that gets drawn onto the map. Or if I double right-click, they'll run until they're within range, and right away start opening fire at the target. So it's the same concept, just the difference is in melee, of course, you have to be up close, and with range, you can open fire from far away. Another thing to keep in mind is that unless you toggle on guard mode, which is this button down here, your units will actually chase these units, the enemy units I should say, should they choose to disengage or rout. In other words, you could end up having a extremely high value unit of yours, such as, let's say, an extremely elite group of halberdiers I should say, chase a rather weak unit off until the edge of the map simply because they weren't put into guard mode. So I'm going to put these guys into guard mode to make sure that they don't chase these guys down should they win. However, the archers I will leave off guard mode, and you'll see that they chase the enemy when they start to rout. I'm going to speed up just a little bit. Oh, well, I've won, but even still, the game gives you a chance to chase down the enemy to thin their numbers. That helps in campaign battles and campaign maps because it maintains, it carries over into the campaign. But you'll see the unit that I set into guard mode has stayed stationary. They've won their engagement and they've stayed behind. But the archers, or rather the crossbowmen, who aren't in guard mode, are chasing down the unit. They're trying to keep them in range so that they can open fire. Now, imagine I still was engaged with the enemy here, a huge line of spearmen, and I've got my weak crossbowmen just running down the field where I could potentially just have them skewered and killed. So it's very important to use guard mode to make sure that you have full control of your units. It's essential in the heat of battle, and it keeps things centralized and you know exactly where everything is, or at least you should know exactly where everything is. On the topic of maintaining control, let's talk about the Fire at Will button. When you've got a ranged unit selected, you'll see down here the Fire at Will button is on by default. When it's on, your ranged units will engage any enemy unit in range. And while this makes sense in some scenarios, I like to turn it off, mainly to preserve ammunition. So let's take a look at this situation here, where in just a moment these troops are going to get into my crossbowmen's range, but my crossbowmen aren't going to open fire. Like I said, this is to preserve ammunition. I want to be able to choose who I hit. A volley of missiles wasted on a hard-to-damage unit is a waste of missiles, where I can instead target one that I can actually thin down. So I'm going to tell these guys to chase after these spearmen with their arrows, as opposed to the Lord, because I don't stand a chance of causing any damage there. Now, while that's happening, I want to point out that with artillery, you can actually get them to attack the ground. If you have them selected, hold down Alt and right-click on the ground, they'll open fire to hit the middle of nowhere in the hopes of doing some damage when they eventually miss, because accuracy be damned. Another thing to keep in mind is your range units can actually switch into Skirmish Mode by clicking this button down here. And what that actually does is it tells them that when an enemy melee unit comes close enough, they should start retreating. This is an excellent micromanagement tool used to keep your range units safe. Basically, it tells them that they're not supposed to engage in melee, they're supposed to keep a safe distance at all time. Now let's say I did want to engage them in melee. What I can do is I can toggle on melee mode down here by clicking this button or tapping F, and then I can send them right into the fray. They pull out their swords, and now I can have them charge in, but I do have to turn off skirmish mode as well, and I can have them charge in. This should only be used in desperate situations, in my opinion. It's typically a death sentence forcing your ranged units to engage in melee combat. It does have its uses, though you can expect some severe casualties. Though we're talking about attacking, I do have to cover one defensive maneuver, the countercharge. As I mentioned, a charging unit gets a bonus to its attack. A defending unit can negate this bonus, at least to a degree, by charging the incoming unit and getting its own charge bonus. Now, this isn't necessary when your defensive unit has a base stat that protects it from charges, and you'll see that listed under the unit details. Now, this does take good timing. If you're too late, your troops are merely starting to move when they're struck, out of formation and weak. If you're too early, you might not arrive at maximum speed, and you might be pulled into a trap if the enemy reacts by retreating. It's important to remember that you should never countercharge a cavalry charge. When you've got cavalry barreling down towards you, the best thing you can do is hold steady and brace. Now let's discuss the attack move. I've seen a few people ask me how one might go about doing that in Total War games, and the simple answer is, you don't. When your units are marching, they will engage any unit that's in their path. In most real-time strategy games, you're worried an enemy unit might go by unscathed. In Total War games, you should worry about your units being intercepted or pulled away from the formation. With that said, you can tell a unit to move behind an enemy unit if you want your unit to get there, and engage only if the enemy is in the way. So let's try that here. My unit of swordsmen are going to just march forward and try to get to their end destination over here, and these spearmen will most likely be in the way, intercepting us, and so will engage in battle. Let's speed it up a little bit so we can see that happen. Now you'll see here, let's say I just set that command and forgot about it. These spearmen have moved aside, but my swordsmen aren't attacking them. That wasn't their target. Their order was to march straight there. So again, it wasn't an attack move command, it was a move command, and they would simply engage any unit that was in their way. This is why you want to avoid doing this. You want full control at all times, so if you want to attack a unit, you make sure to order your units to attack that unit. Being a general is about having control. You don't want your units to do whatever they want, depending on how they feel. The battlefield is not a place for feelings. And finally, let's talk about attacking in formation. Let's say you've got a long line of melee units. If you group them, as I explained in a previous video with Ctrl-G, and select one unit to attack, your group will actually move forward and attack their closest facing enemy. This is a great way to maintain your army's shape and have them auto-assign which target they end up with on the other side. So it's a pretty easy way to maintain your, again, your shape and your overall form, and as you'll see here, these units move to engage pretty accurately their counterparts on the other side of the field. So that's how you make sure your formations are maintained while moving down the field to attack. I've seen a few people ask about this. No, you don't have to select units individually and tell them who to target. You do have to be wary though, because at times you'll find yourself enveloped by units, like let's say you were outnumbered by the enemy, and one of your units is now fending off against two enemy units. That is something you have to be wary of, because surrounded and outnumbered 2-to-1, unless your unit is better in terms of its quality or it's sort of more elite in rank, it'll probably surrender and rout. And as I explained in another video, that can cause a mass rout. You don't want that to happen. So there you have it. Moving and attacking in formation is possible. All you have to do is group the units with Ctrl-G, make sure they're locked as a formation, then select the group and right-click one enemy unit, and the entire line of troops will organize themselves and find their counterparts on the other side of the battlefield and attack them accordingly. As you can see, attacking is a lot more complex than the game leads you to believe. There are a variety of modes and methods to use, and it's important to know which orders to issue at any given time, and that's what being a great general is about. For more tips and tricks, subscribe to this channel, and if there's something you'd like to see covered, let me know in the comments below.